Some people say once you taste danger, safety starts to feel like silence. I thought I wanted peace. But maybe I was just addicted to the chaos that once destroyed me. My name is Isabella, and until that night, I thought I had a very clear understanding of boundaries, loyalty, and self-control. I used to believe that attraction could always be managed with reason, that lines once drawn would remain untouched. But sometimes reality bends those lines in ways one never anticipates. He was my colleague, 8 years older, not my superior, but someone I deeply respected. His name was Ethan. He was calm, composed, and possessed that rare kind of presence that made you feel seen without being exposed. In a workplace often ruled by noise and ego, he carried silence like a weapon. Our group of 6 or 7 colleagues had formed a strange sort of family. We would often end up at Ethan's home after work, casual hangouts that stretched into late nights of laughter, stories, and music. His wife Claire always joined us, hosting with grace and warmth. She had that effortless charm that made every guest feel welcome. To anyone looking in, their marriage seemed ideal, steady, affectionate, built on trust. I never questioned it. I never even thought about him in that way. Until that night. It was a Friday. The office had been unbearable, a storm of deadlines and tension. Ethan invited everyone over as usual, saying we all needed a break. We arrived around 9, ordered takeout, and opened a few bottles of wine. The air was light, filled with teasing and laughter. Claire was there, radiant as ever, talking about some charity project she had started. Hours passed. One by one, people began to drift into sleep. Some on the couch, others in the guest room. Claire retired early, saying she had a headache. Soon, only Ethan and I were awake, sitting across from each other in the dim light of the living room. The room had fallen silent except for the hum of the air conditioner and the faint tick of the clock. He looked tired. Not physically, something deeper, like the exhaustion that comes from carrying too many unspoken words. "Are you all right?" I asked softly. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides something. "You ever feel like you were living inside a script that you never agreed to perform?" I did not know what to say. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "My marriage. It ended 2 years ago, Isabella. We just never signed the papers." I froze. It sounded impossible. Claire adored him. At least that was how it looked. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "We share a house, not a life. She stopped touching me 2 years ago. She does not even look at me anymore." There was no bitterness in his voice, only resignation. He spoke like someone describing the weather, inevitable, unchangeable. I wanted to say something comforting, something professional and detached. But the way he looked at me, raw, vulnerable, it shattered that distance. "I am sorry," I whispered. He looked straight at me, his eyes glassy under the dim light. "You are the first person who ever said that like they meant it." Something inside me shifted. I could feel it, a quiet, dangerous pull. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence between us became heavy, alive. I could hear my own heartbeat. I wanted to leave, but I could not move. When he finally reached for my hand, I did not pull away. His touch was gentle, hesitant, almost like a question. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I convinced myself it was harmless, just comfort, human warmth. But when he looked into my eyes, there was something deeper there. A confession without words. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "May I kiss you?" My mind screamed no, but my heart, reckless and trembling, said nothing. I do not even know how long that moment lasted. All I remember is the feeling of crossing a line I had never intended to cross. It was not passion. It was sadness wearing the disguise of intimacy. When reality hit, it hit hard. I stepped back, breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. I should go, I said, my voice shaking. He looked like he wanted to stop me, but he did not. He simply nodded. I am sorry, he said softly. I walked out of his house feeling both lighter and heavier than I had ever felt. The air outside was cold. The city was asleep. My reflection in the car window looked like a stranger. On the drive home, my thoughts spun in every direction. Guilt, confusion, disbelief, all tangled together. I kept replaying the night in my head, wondering why I had not walked away sooner. But deep down I knew the answer. It was not about him. It was about me. About the loneliness I had buried under work and routine. About the quiet ache of being understood for the first time in years. When I reached home, I sat in the dark for hours. The memory of his voice, his eyes, his sadness, it would not fade. I kept telling myself it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But a part of me knew it had already changed everything. That night was supposed to be like every other. Laughter, friendship, comfort. Instead, it became the moment that would haunt both of us for months to come. I wish I could say I learned my lesson that night, that I walked away clean and untouched. But truth rarely fits inside the neat lines of morality. Sometimes the heart moves faster than reason. Sometimes one night becomes a lifetime of consequences. And for me, that night, that silence, that glance, that single kiss, marked the beginning of a story I never planned to write. The morning after that night, I woke up before dawn. The first thing I felt was a heavy silence pressing against my chest. It was not just guilt. It was the awareness that something irreversible had taken place. I kept replaying every moment. His voice, his eyes, that unbearable pause before I left. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign, as though I had borrowed someone else's choices. At work that Monday, I avoided his floor entirely. But the office, with all its corridors and glass walls, has a way of collapsing distance. By noon, our eyes met across a conference room. For a heartbeat, everything around us dissolved. The chatter, the screens, the steady rhythm of normal life. I looked away first. Later that day, he found me in the break room. His expression was tense, polite, rehearsed. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I nodded, though every instinct told me to run. We sat in an empty meeting room, sunlight spilling across the table. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "It was a mistake." I forced a small smile. "Yes, it was." He nodded as if confirming something to himself. "It cannot happen again." "I know," I replied. But the silence that followed betrayed both of us. It was not relief we felt. It was longing mixed with fear, the kind of ache that only grows when suppressed. In the weeks that followed, we tried to rebuild distance, to act as though that night never happened. Yet, instead of fading, the memory sharpened. Every conversation carried an undercurrent. Every accidental touch felt like fire. He would send me brief, practical messages, reminders, project updates. But sometimes there was something unsaid behind them. I would tell myself I imagined it, but when I caught him looking at me in meetings, I knew I was not wrong. One evening, a few of us stayed late to finish a presentation. When everyone finally left, he lingered near my desk. "Do you want to grab coffee?" he asked casually. I hesitated. Then I said yes. At the cafe, the conversation began safely. Work, deadlines, small jokes. But slowly, without meaning to, we drifted toward personal ground. He told me about his father's illness, about the years he spent pretending everything was fine. I told him about my own family, the childhood arguments that left invisible scars. It was strange how easily we could talk when we were supposed to stay silent. We shared stories we had never told anyone else. It was not romance yet, not exactly. It was recognition. Two lonely souls seeing themselves reflected in another. Those late-night coffees became a pattern. We started meeting outside work, always in quiet corners, always pretending it was coincidence. Our conversations grew deeper, softer. He spoke about Claire, about how the distance between them had turned into a wall. I listened, trying not to justify what I knew was wrong, but empathy does not ask for permission. The more I understood his pain, the more dangerous my compassion became. One evening, after another long conversation, he said something that has stayed with me ever since. "Sometimes," he murmured, "I think people meet too late, when the right connection comes at the wrong time." I felt that sentence settle somewhere deep inside me. I could not disagree, but I also could not accept it. By spring, we had become inseparable in ways words cannot describe. We began sharing our daily routines, morning messages, small updates, late-night calls. It was a secret friendship that blurred into something more. We both knew what we were doing was reckless, yet we could not let go. He made me laugh again, made me feel visible in a world that often overlooked me. And I, in turn, made him feel alive, or so he said. One Friday, he told me he needed a break, that he was driving out of town for the weekend, somewhere quiet by the coast. Before I could think, he added, "You should come. You deserve some air, too." I told myself it was innocent. Two friends escaping stress. But as I packed my bag, I knew that was a lie. The drive was silent at first, the hum of the car filling the spaces our words could not. The ocean appeared in the distance like a secret waiting to be confessed. At the cabin, everything felt suspended. The air smelled of salt and pine. The world outside disappeared. We cooked simple food, walked along the beach, talked until midnight. It was there, under that quiet sky, that the distance finally collapsed. We did not plan it. We did not even speak it into existence. It simply happened. The inevitable outcome of months of restraint, guilt, and yearning. The details do not matter. What mattered was the silence afterward. He held me as if he was trying to memorize the moment, and I remember thinking that the world had never felt both so right and so wrong at the same time. When morning came, reality returned like a tide. He made coffee. I sat by the window, watching the sea crash against the rocks. Neither of us spoke much. The silence was heavy but strangely calm. "We cannot keep doing this," I said quietly. He nodded, but his eyes told a different story. "I know," he replied, "but I also know I cannot undo it." On the drive back, I stared out the window while he focused on the road. I tried to convince myself that what happened was just another mistake, an emotional detour that would fade with time. But deep down, I knew it had become something we could no longer contain. When we reached the city, he dropped me off a few blocks from my apartment. Before I stepped out, he said softly, "You mean more to me than I should ever admit." I did not answer. I simply walked away, my heart heavy, my mind a storm of contradictions. That weekend changed everything again. What began as a single misstep had turned into a secret life, a connection that both saved and destroyed parts of us. I used to think guilt would fade with repetition, that the heart would eventually adapt. But guilt does not fade. It simply finds new ways to coexist with desire. Every time I saw him at work afterward, my chest tightened. Every meeting felt like a performance, every glance a confession. We had crossed the line, not once but again and again, until the line itself disappeared. And even now, when I look back, I cannot tell whether what we shared was love or loneliness wearing a convincing mask. But I do know this. Once you open the door to forbidden comfort, it never truly closes again. That realization marked the beginning of our unraveling, and the slow, inevitable cost of what we chose to call connection. For a few months, everything felt like magic. It was the kind of illusion that made reality seem dull, a spell woven out of secrecy and adrenaline. Ethan and I lived inside a world only we could see, one that existed between office hours, late-night messages, and stolen weekends. The guilt was still there, but it had changed shape. It no longer felt like a warning. It had become part of the thrill. Every secret glance across the office, every coded text, every quiet knock at his door carried a rush that felt almost like power. He had a way of taking control, of drawing me into his world as if I were the only one who could understand him. At first, I told myself that what we shared was love. Raw, passionate, unfiltered. But love should heal. Ours consumed. Ethan's moods began to shift. He was warm one moment and distant the next. I told myself it was the pressure of hiding, but deep down I sensed something darker. He liked control, not just emotionally, but in every sense. He wanted to dictate when we met, how we spoke, what I wore, even how I felt. It began subtly, with small requests that sounded almost caring. But slowly they became commands disguised as affection. And the more he controlled, the more I surrendered. I was addicted to his intensity, to the feeling that danger itself had become my pulse. There were moments that frightened me, not because of what he did, but because of how much I wanted to stay. There was a wild, reckless part of me that craved the chaos he brought. I began to mistake his dominance for devotion. Sometimes he would call his wife while I was still there, speaking to her with calm affection as if our world did not exist. The first time it happened, I froze, my breath caught in disbelief. But he looked at me, unshaken, as if daring me to question it. In that silence, something inside me fractured. I should have left. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but instead I stayed. The danger became the drug. The secrecy, the fear, the rush, it all blurred into one twisted sense of belonging. He began inviting me to his home when his wife was away, asking me to wait in hidden corners to remain unseen. The first time I did it, my hands shook. The sound of every car outside felt like a threat. But when he looked at me with that same intense certainty, my fear turned into excitement. I was not in love anymore. I was addicted to the danger of being chosen in secret. Every time I told myself it would be the last, he would find a way to pull me back. A message, a glance, a whisper that promised I was the only one who truly understood him, and I believed it. The strange thing about falling into something forbidden is that you begin to rewrite your own logic. Wrong starts to feel inevitable. The heart learns to justify what the mind cannot forgive. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The thrill began to fade, replaced by anxiety. I started checking my phone constantly, waiting for his messages. If he was distant, I felt invisible. If he was kind, I felt alive again. My emotions became tied to his attention, and that was the most dangerous part. He once told me, "You bring out the part of me that I try to hide." At the time, it sounded romantic. Now I realize it was a warning. Because as he unraveled, I did too. The more secretive we became, the more detached I grew from everything else. Friends noticed the change, the way I smiled less, the way I drifted through conversations without really being there. I started lying without guilt, creating stories to cover the cracks. At night, I would lie awake, replaying every memory. Sometimes I missed the simplicity of who I was before him. Sometimes I did not even remember that version of myself. The worst part was how easily he moved between two worlds, husband and lover, professional and predator, calm and storm. He could speak to his wife as though everything was fine, then turn to me with that same intensity, whispering that I was the only one who truly mattered. It was manipulation, but I called it passion. There is a thin line between love and self-destruction, and by then, I had crossed it completely. I stopped noticing how wrong everything had become. I began to seek men who were already taken. as if I had learned to equate risk with connection. The forbidden had become my comfort zone. Looking back now, I understand that it was never about love. It was about control, his and eventually mine over my own pain. The danger made me feel alive because it distracted me from everything I refused to face. Ethan once told me that people like us were too complicated for ordinary love. I used to believe him. Now I see it for what it was, a justification, a way to make the chaos sound poetic. But in truth, there was nothing poetic about it. There was only loneliness dressed as passion, guilt disguised as devotion, and a woman who forgot how to recognize herself in the mirror. The illusion began to crack one evening when I saw him with Claire again, laughing, relaxed, his hand resting gently on hers. From across the street, I watched them, and something inside me broke quietly. It was not jealousy. It was the realization that I had been living in someone else's shadow, a shadow that was never meant to have a name, a voice, or a future. When I went home that night, I sat in the dark just like I had after our first mistake. Only this time there were no tears, no guilt, just silence, the kind that comes when you finally understand that the story you built was never yours to begin with. The magic had died. The addiction remained, and I knew that if I did not end it soon, it would end me. That was the night I began to see the truth, that love built on secrecy eventually collapses under its own weight. But even knowing that, part of me still longed for the chaos. Because when danger becomes your comfort, peace starts to feel like emptiness, and that is where the real tragedy begins. Peace. That is what I had always said I wanted. Stability. A man who would hold my hand without making my heart race with fear. A life without lies. For a while I thought I had found that. His name is Michael. He is kind, gentle, and patient in ways I never believed men could be. He listens. He remembers small things. The way I take my coffee, the songs I hum absent-mindedly, the quiet pauses between my thoughts. He tells me I make his world calmer. He means it. And yet every time he touches me, I feel nothing. Not emptiness exactly, but absence. As if my body remembers another language, one that Michael does not speak. He loves softly, tenderly, safely. But I have forgotten how to live inside safety. It feels strange to admit this aloud. To confess that I miss the very danger that almost destroyed me. But the truth is I do. I miss the chaos, the tension, the feeling that something forbidden was breathing down my neck, the pulse that came from knowing I could lose everything with one wrong move. Michael gives me warmth, but warmth cannot replace fire. Sometimes when he kisses me, I close my eyes and try to stay present. I remind myself that this is love. Honest, pure, uncomplicated love. But my mind betrays me. It drifts. I see other faces, hear other voices. My past creeps into the room like a ghost that refuses to leave. I keep telling myself I have changed, that I am no longer the woman who found meaning in chaos. But addiction has a way of disguising itself as nostalgia. It started small, harmless curiosity, I told myself. A conversation online, a message from someone who reminded me of what used to be thrilling. His tone was bold, familiar, slightly dangerous. It felt like opening a door I had promised to keep locked. I could have closed it. I should have. But the truth is, part of me wanted to feel alive again. To feel that edge between control and collapse. So I replied. One message became two. Two became a conversation. Then a meeting. And just like that, I crossed the line again. It was not love this time. It was not even desire. It was the pursuit of a feeling, that surge of adrenaline I once mistook for connection. That intoxicating rush that came from doing what I was not supposed to do. Afterward, I sat in silence, watching the rain slide down the window. I thought I would feel guilt, the kind that used to burn. But instead I felt hollow, numb, as if I had repeated an old ritual without remembering why it once mattered. When I returned home, Michael was there, reading on the couch. He looked up and smiled, unaware of the storm I carried inside me. He asked if I had eaten. I nodded. He told me he loved me. I said it back, but the words tasted like echoes of someone else's truth. That night, when he fell asleep, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying moments I wanted to forget. Not because they were wrong, but because they made me realize how broken my sense of love had become. Some people chase success. Others chase freedom. I chase danger, emotional, moral, psychological danger. It has become my way of feeling alive. I do not blame Ethan anymore. I do not even blame myself. I have learned that sometimes trauma rewires you in ways you cannot undo. My body associates love with fear, affection with risk, touch with secrecy. Michael deserves someone unscarred by that wiring. Someone who does not mistake peace for boredom. And yet he stays. He looks at me with faith I do not deserve, with patience that feels almost painful. There are moments when I wish I could tell him everything, that I could pour the truth into his hands and ask him to forgive the fragments of me that still crave the wrong kind of love. But I know what that would do. It would break him. Not because he would hate me, but because he would still try to understand. So I stay silent. Silence has become my shield again. Not the thrilling kind this time, but the heavy kind. The one that isolates. The one that builds invisible walls between what is and what once was. Sometimes I think about the concept of rehabilitation, how people recover from addictions, how they retrain their minds to reject what once felt irresistible. I wonder if the same is possible for a heart addicted to danger. Maybe love, for some of us, will always come tangled with pain. Maybe the adrenaline, the risk, the secrecy. Maybe that was never about romance at all. Maybe it was about control, about reclaiming power in the only way I knew how. But power built on lies is an illusion. I realize that now. One evening, as I watched Michael cook dinner, I noticed the way he hummed to himself. Calm, unguarded, content. There was no tension in him, no need to perform, no hunger for validation. He existed in peace, and for a moment I envied that simplicity. I wondered if I could ever reach that place. If I could ever love without fear, without calculation, without the craving for something forbidden. The truth is, I am still trying. Sometimes I think I am healing. Other times, I feel like I am standing at the edge of the same cliff, staring down at the same chaos, daring myself not to jump. The difference now is awareness. I know the pattern. I know the cost. I know that every secret burns twice. Once when it begins, and once when it ends. I wish I could tell you that I have changed, that I have stopped searching for that dangerous pulse in ordinary love. But honesty demands otherwise. I am still learning how to live without it. Maybe one day I will wake up and realize that peace can be beautiful too, that love does not have to hurt to feel real. Until then, I carry my past like a scar I cannot hide. I am Isabella, the woman who mistook danger for depth, who sought passion in secrecy, who betrayed the very peace she claimed to crave. But I am also the woman trying every single day to find her way back to herself. Because in the end, redemption is not about forgetting the thrill. It is about learning to live without needing it. Subscribe to Hopeful Endings for more stories that break, heal, and remind you. Every ending can still be rewritten.